Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Trauma Uncensored. I'm your host, Brooke Shearer. We've got another great episode for you today, which we will jump into shortly. If you're a regular listener of this podcast, thank you for your continued support. And if this is your first time listening, I'm so glad you found us. This podcast was created as a safe space for community, connection, resources, and support for anyone navigating trauma, grief, mental health, or pain. Here, your experiences are both valid and valued. Your story matters, and it's important to know you are not walking this path alone. It is my hope that each episode helps you feel more connected and reminds you that it is possible to not only live, but to truly thrive after hardship. Trauma Uncensored began as an extension of my own healing journey following immense trauma. The course of my life changed in the fall of 2015 and led to the tragic death of our 9-year-old son, Logan, in 2016 due to a distracted driver whose reckless choice behind the wheel led to the crash. In the time since Logan was taken from us, I have fought for my mental health and for my survival. That fight has led me down an unexpected path of discovery, healing, and recovery. It has given me the tools to sit here today and share these conversations with you. If you're new to the Trauma Uncensored podcast, I invite you to start with episode 1 titled The Crash. In that episode, I share the beginning of my story, which provides important context for the conversations and guest stories that follow. Speaking of guests, we believe our listeners' voices matter deeply, and we welcome those who wish to share their experiences. If interested, click on the submission link in our show notes below, email hello@traumauncensored.com, or reach out through any of our social platforms. Just be sure to include the word guest in your submission. All show information, resources, and links can also be found in the show notes. Be sure to follow us on our social media platforms and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. And if this podcast speaks to you, and I'm sure it will, we would truly appreciate you leaving a review. Before we begin, a quick and important disclaimer. This podcast discusses topics related to grief, loss, trauma, mental health challenges, survival, and more. While I have gained deep personal experience in these areas, I am not a therapist, and this show is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. So stay tuned for another installment of Trauma Uncensored, where, as always, we're healing out loud.
Trauma Uncensored.
Trauma Uncensored.
Trauma Uncensored.
Hey, Bri, how's it going?
Ooh, it's going okay.
It's going. You feeling a little nervous?
I am, but I'm also excited. It's like that fine line of, it's life, right? Life is very rarely is it one emotion. Usually we're trekking with a couple, and so I am holding space this morning for both whatever comes up, whether it be the grief, sadness, but I am feeling nervous, but then also excited. Two sides.
Well, good.
One coin.
Well, I am excited to have you.
Thank you.
Andreas, your husband, was on, or his episode released last week. So here you are, you're following up with your story. We'll talk a little bit. We'll do that quick roundup and reminder of what his episode was about in a second.
Yeah.
But I have one burning question for you before we begin.
Okay.
Burning question.
Yes.
Where's my latte?
Oh, Andres.
So for everyone who has been listening throughout all of the shows, this is the Bri that is married to Andreas, and that brings him coffee every time we would record, and I would say, "Where's my coffee?" And I mean, it's just too bad that you're all the way on the West Coast and I'm here in Middle Tennessee, where we got rocked this past weekend with the storms.
No.
I got very lucky. Our house actually kind of like sat on this line between things being okay and Armageddon. So we were lucky to be like in that okay space. I mean, we still got a ton of ice and there are trees down and everywhere, but very thankfully we kept our power. And I mean, with 2 children and 2 dogs, I would have been in trouble had it gone out, because I know people who, it's been almost a week and their power's still out. So
yikes.
it's insane. But yeah, I went from coffee to that. I don't
I
know.
mean, no.
See how I jump?
Warmth. Well, I mean, coffee provides warmth. And then you're like, what does not provide warmth? Massive
Ice.
snowstorms,
Yeah.
ice, and lack of power. So to me, it makes sense.
Yeah, we're always
Oh,
connecting the dots. It's totally
man.
fine. Totally fine.
Oh,
But, I don't know if Andreas told you, but I've been making my own lattes. You have inspired me to stop with just the black coffee and enjoy a latte every day. And damn it, I am enjoying a latte every day. It's great.
Yeah.
That's called living life, really.
You know,
It's the
I
simple
think
things.
I support it. Not that you need my support in that, but
I don't
latte.
have like that massive machine that you guys have, but mine's just a little Nespresso, but it works.
No, we're not here. We're not here to have any sort of shame culture around whatever machine you have, because I could go off and I could complain about mine in weird ways too. You know what I'm saying? So I think, the fact that we've got access to coffee and access to warm milk to put in our coffee, that's
There you go.
Pretty amazing, actually.
That's fair.
So I'm grateful.
That's fair. All right. So before we get started, I wanted to highlight a comment that we received from one of our listeners about the episode with Daniel that happened just recently, episode 39. So Amy E. said, I listened twice and there will be a third. Thank you, Daniel, for sharing your story. You're an inspiration. So thank you, Daniel. And I hope his story touched many, many others as well. I love sharing feedback on the show. So if you have any sort of feedback you'd like shared, or would like, your own call out on the episode, send us an email at hello@traumauncensored.com, or feel free to comment on any of our socials and we will read your feedback there. So without further ado, Bri, let's talk about your trauma. I know quite a bit now, especially after having gotten the full conversation from Andreas about, your daughter Rio. So Rio was born in October of 2024. And, you guys had this birth plan that you were excited about, and it was all planned out. You had it planned to the T and you knew what you wanted, and then everything turned upside down. So we've heard this story from Andreas's side, who was actually with Rio because you had a C-section, correct?
Correct.
And you were recovering, and Andreas went with Rio immediately after she was born. But I want to get the mother's perspective, because being a mother myself, I understand what kind of things can go through our heads, especially since we're the one who's carrying the baby and we're, trying to keep the baby safe, and, all of the what ifs that can filter through, and sometimes the shame and the guilt, which I'm assuming you probably have felt all of those things through your story. But I would love to open up the floor and hear what that experience was like from your side.
Yeah. So my brain is trying to figure out on where to start here in the timeline, because it's like oh my gosh, I ran to my first therapy session where I'm like, well, let me start from the beginning, when I was born.
That's right. But that's really, if people knew that that's actually where it starts, then I think a lot of us would be so much better off.
Oh.
Wait, but
from my
where's
husband.
mine? Oh my gosh, Andreas,
I know.
where's my coffee?
We have yet to get to, this is my only limited sci-fi knowledge, but I don't know if is it Star Trek? Beam me up, Scotty. Is that Star Trek? We've yet to get where we can put this in a machine and get it to departicleize and then reparticleize in front of you. So I do apologize.
It would be if you could get on that, I would appreciate it. Yeah.
I am not the brain to do it, but I will. I'll work
You've got
around
this.
it.
You've got this.
So I started thinking about where to start with this story with Rio, and it's interesting. It's interesting to be a woman, a female body individual who can get pregnant and have the miracle of life that is. Because I'll try and say this as succinctly as possible, but I think any woman who, I mean, just the start of if you want to get pregnant, what that means, and the turmoil that can come of will the pregnancy hold? Can I have babies? The checkups that happen, the feeling of maybe if you get the chance to be pregnant and then you're like, will this stick, and going to the appointments. And there's a lot of emotions along the way. And as far as even like pregnancy announcements, when do you announce? Do you not announce? What happens if you announce and then you miscarry? And having to deal, especially in our society now where things are so, if you choose to participate in it, the social awareness where you're posting on social media, you're posting to larger audiences. And so there can be, I don't know, there's a breadth of like where I could dive in as far as where does the emotional experience start. I mean, throughout the entirety of pregnancy. So, and your hopes and dreams, I think too, of like anytime you have expectations of what you set out for and then it doesn't go to plan, which is kind of a joke. Cause I think most women I talk to is like, oh, like you make plans and then what happens. And so trying to hold an open hand, I'm going to probably say this a lot. I try to have an open hand with expectations of what I'm hoping for, understanding it won't go the same way while also maybe trying to be prepared. So, and if at any point cut me off, because I feel like I can go on tangents.
No, you talk. That's what this space is for. I mean, I guarantee you, because I'm sitting here listening to your words and I'm immediately like taken back to my own experiences immediately. Because I'm thinking about, the 18 months it took for us to conceive Logan. And what's interesting is that, I mean, and I was so heartbroken and, and I couldn't understand why, we were, and people say, it's because you're trying, right? Or you're trying too hard. And what was interesting for us is that, at that time, after those 18 months, I had decided I was going to put everything on hold. And I wasn't, I was like, you know what? I want to go to grad school and then we can talk about starting a family after. And wouldn't you believe it? The moment I said that, I got pregnant. So I ended up in starting grad school with a 2-month-old child.
Wow.
Yep. But he was amazing. I mean, he helped so much during that whole thing. So, but that's the thing. I guarantee you there are a lot of people out there listening and going, well, this resonates completely.
Well, because I've had friends go through IVF and IVF successfully. I have friends who are currently in the middle of IVF trying to get pregnant. I've had friends have a one-night stand and end up with a baby,
right?
like there's like, and it's a gift. It's a gift, but then it's also, everyone's journey is a combination of joy and grief that is ever shifting as much as the capacity at which you love, I think is equal to the capacity at which you can feel grief. There's often hand in hand, and it's a dance, and we don't always choose when the grief comes up, and we don't always choose when the feelings of joy come up either, because you can be in the midst of a joyful situation where you'd look back and be like, wow, that was amazing. And in the moment you're like, wow, I am feeling mediocre. I'm having a dip day. I'm flatlining, or you're feeling like kind of numb. So I know there's so much, because we're emotional human beings, because of course, but there's so much around just the entire journey of getting pregnant, and everyone's story is different on what they experience throughout. So, I mean, for us, it was kind of like trying, not trying, ended up getting pregnant. But then it was like with the first, our first checkup, like I started having bleeding. And so I'm just a little tidbit. I'm youngest of 6 kids. I'm 6, there's 5 siblings. I have 4 sisters and 1 brother. And 3 of my sisters have had multiple births. I've got, 15 nieces and nephews. Besides the point. But so I'm like, oh, I come from a long family of people who have babies, and it's easy, and birth is quick, and no complications is kind of my family lineage, and I got married a little bit older, having a baby older at 35, you're having a geriatric pregnancy.
Yep.
And I was 37, like that's like, I'm like, excuse me, I'm here with my walker, as far as
I got pregnant with Mila. I was just talking, I think maybe I was talking about this with Andreas, but, or someone it was Katie. It was Katie, a family member of mine. We were talking about it on her episode. I got pregnant with Mila at 38 or 30. I was just weeks shy of 38.
Yeah.
And my doctor, she's like, you're geriatric. I don't want you doing anything, but because I was avid in kickboxing and I was in great shape and I wanted to keep doing, and she's like,
of course,
no, you can't even get on the elliptical. You just need to slowly walk on the treadmill. And I'm like,
wild.
She's like, you're high risk. I'm like, this is insane. It was fun.
Yeah.
It's the stigma that they put on you. Oh,
it really
you're
is
38 and you're, geriatric. No, I'm 38 and still young and having
absolutely. Well, and I think,
child.
and depends on like what provider you get. That's a whole,
right.
That's a whole different thing as far as like, what provider do you get? How do they treat you? How are you like, are your symptoms taken as accurate? Are they like dismissive of you? Like there's so many avenues in which people are affected. But like my providers were like, oh, well, the message I got from them was whatever activity you're at now, you can maintain that activity. Just if you weren't exercising before, don't go run a marathon because that's a bad idea. So I got on the tangent of being geriatric, but I don't know, my first ultrasound, I had started having bleeding, and I reached out to my sisters. I was like, okay, I'm experiencing blood. And they're like, oh, I never had blood during pregnancy. All I know is if it's bright red, that might be dangerous. And so then you're like, already in the beginning, trying to hold space for, okay, will this hold? Will the pregnancy hold? Will it not? And then in my brain, I don't remember exactly what it was. Andres probably remembers. But the pregnancy, that was fine, but it was something about like implantation bleeding. So there was blood, but they checked the heartbeat. The heartbeat was there. They said everything's okay. And we kind of went on from there. And it's interesting. Like I just started thinking, and I'll really try to get to when we had her and all of that. But you start to I start to process like, okay, so it took so long to get these, I think it's HCG chemicals that signify that you're pregnant. Right. And then if you have a miscarriage, it takes a while for those numbers to die off. And if somebody's trying to get pregnant and they're later in life, I'm like, I start to process the what ifs of like, oh, what could this mean if I lose this pregnancy? How long is it going to take before we can even try again, let alone when it could actually stick? Because the percentages, if you research it, is actually kind of wild on how the lower number of like the percentage of actually getting pregnant like when you're ovulating. Anyways, what was kind of comforting to me, it was interesting, is my midwives had said that, your body's really intuitive. It's really smart. If your body senses, as much as a loss is a loss and it's hard at any point of your pregnancy, you're still going to grieve. It's not dismissing the grief that you're going to experience, but that your body knows like, hey, the chromosomes are off or something's happening. So we're not gonna see this egg to term. And so even though there's grief and there's loss and missing a pregnancy or missing the thing that you're hoping for and you're wanting, sometimes, I don't know, maybe sometimes that's what needs to happen. Anyways, I digress. I'll move forward in my story.
No, but I do think, I do think that that's a very, very good point that you make, because a lot of times as humans living within these egos, we have a really hard time seeing past the idea that these things happen, right? They happen. And they do, and it sucks, and it's so fucking hard. And there's always another side. Like, there's always another side to it. It's just a matter of how open the person is in saying something like, okay, my body knew, right, that this was not going to be viable. Or if it went to term, this is what could have happened, right? Yeah. And that goes across the board for any sort of situation or loss. Or, I've thought, here's one of the, and of course it's not about pregnancy, but I'll give this as an example. For a very long time, I thought to myself, because Logan was old enough when he died that he didn't need a booster seat. And he was 9 years old, right? He was well out of a booster. And I was like, well, what would have happened if he was still, and he was sitting upright and strapped in? Would that have saved him? Because it saved Mallory. But then I also think, okay, well, what would have happened if he was sitting in a booster seat and survived that? I hate beyond words the fact that my son is not here. And
Absolutely.
I cannot imagine a life for him where he is a vegetable, completely disabled, maybe paralyzed from the neck down. I mean, and so it's, for what you're saying, it's putting those experiences into the and category. This sucks, and why, and I don't understand, and it's so hard. And what does it mean for the other side? What is the potential purpose for that? So I think you bring up a very, very valid point. I have never had a miscarriage, so I can't sit here and begin to empathize with people.
Right.
But I could absolutely sympathize knowing that, knowing what child loss is like.
Right.
So anyway, I thank you for bringing that point up, because people are sitting here listening to you say that and are understanding what you're saying.
Well, I mean, I think, I like to say it's a practice. It's ever a practice of giving yourself space for whatever emotions come up. Like,
right.
And, we like to categorize emotions sometimes as either good or bad, but emotions aren't good or bad. They're information. They're giving us awareness to ourselves, to the world around us. And they just are. And there is power in feeling those things. There's power in acknowledging them, and holding space for the complexity and the messiness of, I am grieving, and this is sad, as well as, for me, when I often reframe things, it's not that I'm trying to force something positive or say something positive to fake, I don't know, some sort of bolstering, but I often call it a gratitude practice, where I'm like, okay, well, this is hard and there's uncertainty, but and even if it's as simple as, I don't know, and I don't even necessarily want to attach this is exactly how I feel about something, but I am grateful for my breath today. I am grateful that I am sitting here, that I'm able to experience this life. Like, and maybe you feel that and maybe you don't, depending on where you're at. Like, if you're in such a deep place where you can't even find gratitude for your breath, make sure to reach out to somebody, reach out to a friend, talk to someone, just try to be as honest as possible and include people in that space, because there's nothing shameful about it. It's such a natural human experience. And I think sometimes we are a society that is so far removed from death. We're so far removed from, like even how we eat our meats, or like how our animals pass away. They go to the farm, like there's death that happens. There's a cycle of life. And anyways, there's no shame around it. If you're feeling so low, you can't even find gratitude for your day, maybe reach out to a friend. But that's my practice. I like to hold space for the heavy, and then also find gratitude, and then also the and, like you're saying, it's this and that. And
it's
so
not an or. It's
no,
not an or.
I mean, yeah, right. As if things in life are neatly categorized.
Right. Well, the points that you bring up, though, what's so important about recognizing that is that that's what leads to true healing. But it is a practice. It is something that you have to be motivated to do, that you have to want to do. I, in certain experiences, am learning in human nature, there are people who want to heal. There are people who want to heal and go the distance. There are people who want to heal and say they want to heal, but don't allow themselves the vulnerability to actually do what needs to happen. And it's holding that space of the and recognizing, what the depths are that is important.
Yeah, I mean, it's scary. It's scary.
Mhm.
It's scary to change is scary. So I think, if you are used to, and this is okay. Anything I say, caveat, anything I say is a generalization. I'm doing my best here, but now I'm getting distracted. This is what happens. I get like caveats and then I get distracted.
Fine.
You were just saying, here, wait, remind me. This is my mom brain coming in hot.
I was talking about how people want to heal, but they have to be willing to heal, and recognizing the that it's not a but, it's an and.
Yeah. So the desire to change or the desire to heal, I think sometimes, not always, sometimes people, they have lived their life in chaos. They have lived their life in emotional turmoil. And so we sometimes unintentionally recreate the things that we've known. And so to be able to move and heal on for something, if what you like, and I don't know, it's a silly example of like what you know is drama, it's hard to move away from the drama. It's hard to move away from the extremes or to choose to change because there's comfort in what you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, people have to want change for themselves.
They want to have to be able to break the cycle.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I want to change things about myself, and there are things that I am highly aware of, and I'm like, oh wow, there you are again, and so I have to like coach myself. I mean, that's a whole different tangent, but change
you're
can be
still
hard.
doing the work. You're still aware. You're self-aware. You're recognizing, and you're going, okay, I still have that to work on. Because it's not like you just go to therapy one day and then you're like, oh,
no.
hey, I addressed it and I'm fine. I don't need therapy
it's a
anymore.
It's
a lifelong process.
Lifelong process and practice. And I think oftentimes it's a practice of becoming a compassionate observer of your own experience and other people's as well, but learning to be a compassionate observer of your experience. So when you're acknowledging emotions, it's not good or bad. It just is. There's validness in what's coming up. You're becoming, if you start to criticize yourself, I can't believe I'm so upset about this. Why? How ridiculous that I'm upset. Well, I mean, all of a sudden you're just getting angry at yourself, and that's not going to help you process and move on. You're just going to end up in like a little shame corner, which is not, it doesn't feel good. Oh, it doesn't feel good. But, okay. Should I keep going or?
Well,
I guess we are going.
Yeah, we are going. I mean, I would like to get to talk about, your experience with Rio.
Yes.
But
okay.
You have a lot of you're dropping a lot of little gold nuggets here that people, are going to want and need to hear. So this is your space.
This is where I'm going on tangents here. But I guess to go back to the birth story, we went to midwives. I had intention, like you had said earlier, my intention was to, I was like, oh, I've got sisters who have had home births. That's what I want. Maybe because of how I was raised or whatever. Like, I'm not anti birth in a hospital. I don't have often extreme opinions about things. I'm like, this is just for me. This is what I want. I feel good about it. You have a plan in place. If something were to happen, you could end up going to the hospital or whatever if you need the extra support. But I was going to midwives. They were outsourcing for ultrasounds. So I was going to get ultrasounds done at other places because what Rio was born with, that TEF, the tracheal esophageal fistula.
Good.
I
can't do it. So
no, I actually searched that this morning. I was like, I have to be able to say this online. Because I'm like TEF. But usually that's caught in pregnancy. It's caught in ultrasounds, and it was not for us, which is interesting. Anders and I have a different opinion. He's like, oh, I would have wanted to know. And I'm like, maybe it was good for me that I didn't know, because that would have been hard to hold on to for the entirety of the pregnancy. But for those who don't know, if you haven't listened to my husband's episode yet, and I'll kind of jump around a little bit, but she was born with a TEF, which is her esophagus had not fully developed. So the esophagus was it was really short. So, normally when the baby's in the womb, they'll be swallowing amniotic fluid. And for her, she couldn't actually swallow it because the esophagus up top was just a dead end, like a little, little dead end. And the lower part of the esophagus had developed, but it actually had developed and attached to the trachea. And so the best way you can describe it is your trachea goes down and hits your lungs. And so the stomach, when she was born, was kind of operating like a third lung, which doesn't really work, right? Like, so she could breathe. There wasn't an extreme emergency, but she could not eat. And that is a problem because we need nutrition to survive. So I guess I'll just tell this and then I'll kind of talk about the emotional experience of it. But so that also, basically when she was born, we found out that she needed surgery the day after she was born. And I'll go back and tell the details about that. But so yeah, we had to have surgery, and I guess anybody can kind of jump around and talk about it. But just so you get the visual of it, like even post-surgery, what ended up happening is they kind of called it like an upside down wine bottle. But so the top of the esophagus, when the baby swallows the amniotic fluid, it helps to stretch the esophagus out that goes to the stomach. And so the top part of the esophagus got stretched, which is why I have this like little wide, huge U shape that I'm holding. But the lower part of the esophagus, they described like a little spaghetti noodle, like super thin, super tiny, because there was no amniotic fluid to go through and stretch it. So not only as I'm just going to say this blankly, but as the doctor was describing to us, like, hey, we're going to go ahead and take a cut on her side. It'll be about 2 inches wide, maybe, on this little tiny baby. It's like taking up her like full side, but at 2 inches wide, we're going to go ahead and go in there. I can't remember the anatomy exactly, but we're going to go in and we're going to go past her ribs, peel back the lung, and we're going to go in and we're going to snip the lower spaghetti noodle part of the esophagus, and we're going to stitch up the hole in the trachea. And then we're going to go ahead and attach those 2 points of the esophagus. We're going to lay her lung back down. No big deal. And then we're going to just like stitch it up. And so many different parts of that were just that your baby has to have that or whatever. It's wild. But then there's issue that I'll talk about later of why that upside down wine bottle is also scary, where as far as like you've got this wide basin and you're kind of trying to funnel down into this tiny little thing for her to get food, which is part of the problem. So I don't know, put a pin in it and I'll come back around to that. Got it. So, we went through we're doing all the things. I'm working at this point. I'm working full time. I'm sprinting to get as much money as we can before the baby comes. I'm working as late into pregnancy as possible. It's kind of at this time, I'm doing a physical manual labor job, which sometimes is more extreme than others. Most people I'm working with are like, why are you working? Like, you should not be working. And so that's also an interesting component that I won't dive into. But I'm dealing with a workplace that maybe isn't as like normal, quote unquote, for a pregnant woman to be working in. And so there's a lot of kickback, and I've got some sweet moments of people helping me and others of just complete like shame and condemnation. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to choose to not hold that BS today. But anyways, so going through a lot of it. And then at week, I don't even know, 36, 37, maybe it was the week 36, my midwives were like, hey, your baby's breeched. Do you know what a breeched baby is? I'm sure you do.
Oh, yeah. And we talked to, Andreas talked about.
He talked about that whole process.
Yeah, he talked about it too. Well, yeah, and the doctor, you guys were going to see the specialist, and that was supposed to be like the person to turn the babies, and she was like, no.
Okay, yeah. So baby was breeched, which for those of you who don't know, I'll just give a quick little. If a baby's breeched, it is kind of a wild card. There are some midwives out there who will deliver a breeched baby. There are some doctors, but very rarely, because it can end up poorly. So breeched baby, basically when a baby's born, you want the head to come out first. Head's bigger than the rest of the body. So the head comes out and you're like, cool, hardest part done. We're going to get the rest of the baby out. And if they need to if there's any sort of physical manipulation that needs to happen, it's kind of a safer procedure. If the baby is not coming out head first, say if a baby comes out with its legs first, all of a sudden you've got extra limbs up here, the head is larger. You can't get part of the baby out and then have the head at the cervix and be like, oh, we're just going to pull. There's too much sensitivity happening. There's too much going on. So the only way that people, I shouldn't say the only way, often the safest way for breeched births is if the baby's frank, I think it's called Frank's breeched, which is where their bottom, they're kind of in a little piked position. Their legs are up and their bottom can come out first. And so if they come out that way, all the limbs and the rest of the body kind of comes out. And then the I don't know, for whatever reason, it's just safer and it's a smoother transition out. So my baby was Frank's breeched, but my midwives they don't deliver Frank's breech. Some do, mine did not. Um, and um, and as far as the hospital is concerned, there was only one nurse I could find that was willing to do it. So anyways, I guess the reason why I'm talking about this, the why of why I'm talking about this in this moment is that it feels so silly now, but I was grieving. I was grieving my birth plan. I was grieving not being like all my sisters gave birth naturally. Like, what do you mean I might not be able to give a vaginal birth? Like, what do you mean I might have to do and I was gonna do unmedicated. Like, I'm gonna look at me. This is kind of stuff that's always surprising to me is when I start crying about things. I'm like, oh, looks like there is some stuff under the surface still. But
well, I mean, have grace for yourself because you mentioned that it was silly and it's not.
It's not at all.
It's not something. It's not something that you were expecting, and you did have that plan, and that is something that's actually very common with women. They go into it and they say, this is what I think is going to happen. This is what I expect. And you have all of those, you build up these expectations and, because we're not taught that there could be complications, that something could, you go to the doctor and they're like, yeah, everything's great and everything's great. And you see other people and you hear stories and you have siblings and, you have those expectations, whether you mean to or not.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I am not a planner. Planning is not my strong suit. But then sometimes you end up in life and you get up to a moment and you're like, oh, I had expectations I didn't realize I had. I know I had hopes. And so in this scenario, I did have plans, but it was like, you're like, oh, I didn't realize I wanted it that badly. And so in the, shifting of birth plan, you're like, all of a sudden my midwives are telling me you might not be able to give birth vaginally. And I just have I'm like, for whatever reason, my history, I'm like, ooh, I have a little bit of nervousness around like sedation. And I have reasons for that. I've got family members who have reacted poorly to certain medical treatments. And so I'm carrying some of that DNA. So will I react poorly? There's some things underneath the surface there of uncertainty. And so in my being told that I might not be able to give birth vaginally, I was like, okay, what do I need to do? Inversions? Cool. So I started going upside down. I started going to my pool and, biohazards be damned. I can't tell you, in the time I went to go to the pool to try and flip my baby and like doing like lap swimming and going upside down and doing turns in the pool, the times I'd like walk by the hot tub and it'd be like a dad and his kid and be like, oh, I guess they got the poop out, I guess I got the poop out of the hot tub and I'm like, cool. Or I go for a lap swim and they're like, oh, closed for the next 30 minutes due to biohazard. And I'm like, public pools, love this. As I'm processing, how is the chlorine for my body? Is this even good that I'm dipping myself in chlorine right now? Doesn't matter. I mean, it matters, but to the larger scheme. So I started doing all the things. I forget what it's called. There's like a little black thing, Poxy Moxie. I'd have to my brain's lost it. But you basically burn this little black thing and you put it next to your toes and your feet. It's supposed to help a baby turn. And so I was having Andres. I was like, Andres, burn this thing and put the heat next to my toes.
You were trying it.
I was desperate. I was desperate to want my plan to go as planned. And so the next step after doing all those things and them not working was going to get what's called an ECV, which is an external cephalic version, which is where somebody comes in and they physically put their hands on your belly. Before I go into what happened. So I was like, I was thinking there's acupuncture involved and like massage involved. And it's partly on me for not doing the research. I'm often a jump in the deep end type person. So I was like, yes, let's do it. When can we do it? Tomorrow? Okay, great. Let's do it. I'm golden. So I didn't do any research. I said yes to a thing and I didn't fully understand what it was. I was like, oh, a little acupuncture massage. Great. Andres had been to every single appointment. He's like, I want to be there. I want to be present with you. And I can't remember. He had like stayed up late. He had stuff going on. He was exhausted. Like I could tell he was about to collapse. And I was like, you've been to every appointment. I'm like, I'm getting acupuncture and massage. Don't worry about it. Please do not come. Stay home. Rest, So I went to this appointment alone and it was awful. It was awful. So it wasn't just simple acupuncture. There was simple acupuncture involved, but the massage, the ECV, they actually take their hands and they physically maneuver and press on your baby to try and manually flip the baby. And something I didn't know, well, I think it was like told, like it's often done with anesthesia. It's often done with pain medicine. Like it's often done, with pain medicine. And I was like, oh, no, that's fine. I'll do this without it. Like, let's go to the midwife and she's just going to do these things. And it was so painful. At that point, it was the most painful thing I had experienced in my life. And I had a reference point because I had a friend who gave birth a couple weeks prior, and I had talked to her about her birth story, thankfully. Thank you, Cam. If you're out there, I'll send her this link.
Cam.
Thank you, Cam. But Cam was in the hospital, and she ended up getting pain meds. When she decided to get pain meds is when she got the shakes, is what she called it. So she's like, oh, the pain was so intense. My body was shaking, that the pain was so intense. And the midwives or the nurses were like, hey, like now's the time. Like, I think this would be good for you. So she's like, so after I got the shakes, I got the pain medicine, whatever, part of her birth story. And so as I was getting this ECV done in this midwife's office, I went to a midwife's office to get it done. And she let me know she's like, oh, too bad your name doesn't start with an A. I've had 6 successful flips this, week with women who start with an A. And I'm like, okay, whatever. Like, my name's Bri, and clearly this baby's not flipping. But so she was pressing, and I started getting the shakes. So I could only express it like I can imagine, like bird's eye view, as I'm experiencing this, I was imagining what other people were thinking about it, because that's just how I operate. And I'm like, I imagine how I'm coming off. And I'm like, oh, people must think I'm in labor, because I am groaning. I am crying, like the low groans, the crying leading up to like screams. I am weeping. I've got like literal tears coming down my face. And I would consider myself, it's a scale. I'd consider myself to have a relatively high pain tolerance. But I'm like, oh no, this. And then I started shaking, and I was like, Cam, I was like, oh, the shakes. I have the shakes right now as my body is shaking. And I think when I had gotten to that point, the midwife was like, hey, I know you're saying you want to keep going. I kept saying, please keep going. Please. I want my baby to flip. Like, that's how badly I wanted it. And she had to stop and say, hey, I don't think it's going to happen. Like, I think we need to stop and just give a break, and we can always try again. And I was so sad. I think, and you talk about like the like grief or the guilt. You're like, oh, like it didn't work for me, like, why didn't it work? Like, why can't my baby just flip? Like there's a feeling of failure involved, which is interesting. Like, as if I did something, which it's not. It's just my body and, my circumstance or whatever. And so I was just feeling so disappointed. And then I was told, okay, next time you can get it done again. But if you get it done again, you're going to have to get it done with anesthesia and pain meds. And because of family members that I've had who have responded poorly to pain meds, I have a different level of like fear and anxiety around that. And so that I'm like sad and nervous about that, and how that's going to impact me will impact the baby. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And so I call Andres, and I'm crying. And I'm just like, I'm not okay. I'm not like, I'm like, hey, so I know I told you to stay home, but actually out of all the appointments, this one was awful. And he's like, stay where you are. I'm on my way. And so he came over, and there's I don't know if we got food. There's a cute little food spot next door, but thank you, Andres. Thank you, Andres. I don't say it enough. If my tears are not evident, you are a good husband, and I love you. Thank you for being there. I gotta work on my verbal affirmations, because I feel it, but it doesn't always come out to my words.
I mean, it's being able to talk to both of you and about this. I mean, and knowing Andreas like I do, and it's the two of you are an example, a great example of what can exist out there. And I love hearing, I love hearing from both of you on this. And it's so fascinating to me to see two people in a shared experience.
Oh yeah.
I mean, just even down to you talking about the positivity component. I almost said earlier, you guys are definitely married, because you're like two of the same person. You guys, verbalize the same thought process in terms of, what life is, and it's beautiful and it's messy.
Yes.
And, So you guys, you should both be extremely proud of yourselves.
Oh, thank you. Well, I mean, I think
Yes.
that any sort of like, I mean, and well, yeah, this is where I go on a tangent. It'll be short. I mean, as far as positivity and that kind of practice, I mean, I did grow up in a like, I would say a relatively healthy conservative Christian household, but I mean, every family has their stuff, but that would even wasn't like, I would have been on a dangerous path if I had not jumped in my undergrad and got my degree in psychology. I mean, I jumped in and was doing drug and alcohol counseling. And I basically was my first experience to identifying my own emotions. I actually was telling this story recently of my experience when we had these check-ins, really short. Oh, I lost us. There we go. I had a professor who would talk about shoehorning. He'd talk about, a shoehorn is the thing that you like, I don't know, like shove into a shoe. It goes into a tight spot. So he would, he's like every emotion, this is his theory, and not everyone's going to agree, but every emotion can filter down into one of four emotions. Happiness, so happy, sad, angry, and afraid. Happy, sad, angry, afraid.
Yep.
So out of what emotion you're feeling, he would make us check in daily and shoehorn, shove it, whatever emotion you're feeling, whether it's a little bit of annoyance, frustration. Okay, well, that's anger, right? Or it could be, if it's a secondary emotion, it could be that you're feeling sadness underneath. That often happens. But so you shoehorn it, and I would come in. It was kind of like it's a tiny cohort, like 12 people. It's very unique for an undergrad program. All people of all different ages and all different backgrounds. But we'd come in and we'd check in, and I'd come in and I'd be like, "Oh, I'm happy. Like, how are you doing? Oh, I'm happy. I'm happy." And after, I don't know, day 25, who knows what day it was? It doesn't matter. A woman in my class lost her shit. She was like,
when you said you were happy?
Yeah. She's like, happy? Every day you're checking in and you're happy? Are you kidding me? There is no way that you are happy every single day. And she just literally yelling at the top of her lungs, lost her shit. And it was enough for me to be like, oh, what's going on? And it was a process to practice, to check in with how I was doing. And then I'd walk around for a while. And I mean, I think there's benefit in studying something narrowly and then learning to expand that. And like, there's you search it on the interwebs. There's like feelings, emotion wheels that you can look at to help identify how you're feeling.
Yeah, the emotion wheel. That is a great resource. And if people are listening and they don't know what that is something that is huge for creating self-awareness. So I do encourage, you can find it anywhere.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And if on the outside of the circle, it's got like, a bunch of different emotions. And as you close in on the inner part of the circle, it starts to funnel down into that basically. I mean, I guess there's different ones out there, but for the most part, happy, sad, angry, afraid. If you watch Inside Out, great movie, but I think they also include disgust, which I always I have not quite settled my heart on, but besides the point. And so in that, I had practice. I would walk around campus and people would be like, "Oh, how are you feeling today?" And I'd be like, "Oh, I'm feeling angry." And because it was a private Christian campus, they're like, "Oh no, you're angry? What's going on? Oh my gosh, what's happening?" And I was like, well, I stayed up until 3 a.m., pushed off my project until the last minute. I barely got it done, didn't get any sleep, and I turned in kind of a shitty project. And I feel mad at myself for doing that. I did that to myself, and I'm mad at myself for that. But not like an anger where I'm a storm cloud necessarily. But anyways, so I digressed. You're talking about ability to identify emotions. And that started on, I say that I mean, with all of my undergrad and then my graduate, I got my graduate degree in mental health counseling. And I like to joke that I've probably paid more than most people for my own
therapy.
I got the debt to prove it, baby. Oh my gosh.
But you also have created that
I've also gone to
self-awareness.
Yeah, I've also gone to therapy myself, and all of that. Anyway, so as far as it's a practice. It's not like it's a practice. It's a practice to identify your emotions and have space with it. So a lot of grief in the moment with not being able to give birth the way that I want to, or I'm still uncertain at this point. Can I do it? Can I not? I'm calling Andres. I'm in tears, processing it. And he actually had to leave for a work trip. And so it was not even post ECV. I'm like, they're like, oh, and heads up, let us know if anything abnormal happens post the ECV, if there's any bleeding involved. Things can go wrong during an ECV that can impact you and impact the baby. Not all the time. It's a smaller percentage, but it can happen. So he had to leave, and my body felt bruised for 4 days after. I basically was laying around the house. I was physically hurting, and I'm like, did I just selfishly injure me or my baby because I wanted her to flip so I could have a vaginal birth? Like, and it's not, I try to practice holding things again with an open hand and not going too far in my thought process. I try and stop my thoughts almost, or like I acknowledge that they're there, but I'm not going to take it too seriously. So I'm having thoughts that I just injure my baby, but I'm trying not to take it too seriously because I could easily go into a heavy, deep hole and process and weep. I could be a deep feeler. You don't want to go down
the rabbit hole.
If I don't have to, if it doesn't mean it. If it does, I'll get there and I'll process it. But so, kind of trying to hold that with an open hand with the uncertainties. And then after a while, everything's fine. There's no bleeding that happens. And I'm like, you know what? I want to do this again. I'm feeling okay about it. Nothing negative happened. I want to try and flip my baby. So we go to OHSU, Oregon Health and Science University. This is the story that Andres had told. We go in, we do all the prep work. They give us like the emergency, hey, sometimes with ECVs, people can end up in emergency C-sections. So if that happens, we need you to sign off on that. And I had somebody, the woman who gave me the information of what might happen, she was thorough, but she was not, there was no bedside manner. And she was like basically describing every single thing that could go wrong, either both in the procedure, which is probably wise, but both in the procedure or in an emergency C-section. What could happen? Even from the epidural or from the pain medication, you could lose feeling in your legs. That feeling could come back fully. It could come back partially. It could not come back at all. You could have tingling in your limbs for, 9 months post, because they're cutting through, 9-10 layers of tissue. Like, it's crazy. But when she told the story, it was when she explained the information, it was so slow. And she's like, now we're going to cut through this layer. Then after that layer, there's this layer we're going to cut through. Then after that layer, there's this layer. And so it just imagine that, but however long.
And meanwhile, you're going, oh, fuck. Like, she's scaring the shit out of you.
It's terrifying. It's terrifying. And looking back, because even this is she's giving me information on what would it mean for a C-section. And I'm thinking, women get C-sections all the time. And it's amazing. And modern medicine is phenomenal. And it's beautiful that we have C-sections. And often they go well, but sometimes they don't. And when they don't, these are the things that can happen. And holy shirt balls, Batman, that is scary. It is scary. It's like, you're like, any sort of surgery. Is that a dog collar? Did I hear a doggy?
No. Andreas can attest to this. Things every once in a while that are on my windows have a funny way of just falling off during a conversation. And when they do that, I believe a couple of them have been signs in the past. So I tend to say okay, Logan's hanging out and he's wanting me to remember this specific comment or this specific moment, because when it drops off, it means there's something, we hit on some sort of gold. So it would be fun to go back. In fact, I'm going to write this down. I'm time stamping this.
Okay,
right
do
now,
it. Time stamp it. I love that.
I can go back and.
I'm
time stamped.
Time stamped.
We're going to figure it out. You and I
Hell
figure
yeah.
it out together.
There it is.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's so important. I think it's really valuable and really sweet. Oh, I don't know. What you had just described as far as post. You're in the midst of, there's still grief and loss, not that it's ever gone, but I guess when you're able to bring that kind of warm connection into spaces that also there's heaviness and sadness there, but I am really happy for you to have that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I choose to listen. That's what I tell people.
Yeah.
I choose to quiet the ego and listen. And I have honestly found that the more I listen, the more I believe things play out the way that they're supposed to. Because if I force it and I try to have control over it and I think about all of those what ifs and I think about this could happen and this could happen and this could happen, and I try to literally put it into my own box instead of just releasing and, letting go and let happen what's supposed to happen, then it's harder for me. It's more painful for me.
Yeah.
So it's, I choose, and this is a choice that I have, but I choose to continue to have Logan as a major part of my life. And I choose to listen and believe that he is nudging me. He is trying, to reassure me or help give me answers, So even those little ideas that come into my head, to me, those aren't just, oh, okay, it's just an idea. To me, those are whispers. And I'm very good now at listening to the whispers. Very good.
I love that. Yeah, I think there's two things that I just thought of. One, which is going to sound whatever. It's that phrase that if you have to force, like it's like a fart. If you have to force something, it's shit. Like if you're like, oh, force it. You force a fart too hard and you're like, oh no, just sprayed my pants. Not that I spray my pants. That doesn't happen, but that's what I visualize.
Are you sure? Are you speaking from experience? Maybe it was Andreas. Did Andreas do
no,
it? See, what people don't know is that Andreas is listening as we record this. So I feel like I can say what I want because I'm not physically looking at him.
I know. No, he actually we've talked about this. He's very proud that as an adult, he has never shat himself.
Good for him.
I know. Good for him.
He's still young. He's still young. Super young. Your time's coming, buddy.
Every marathoner out there is like, oh, I've shit myself. Because when you run so far, eventually your body's like, gotta quit the poop out. Okay, I digress. So I think here, if you have to force something at shit, and then I think also what's beautiful about that is not only, I gotta make sure I'm turning towards the mic. Because the camera's over here, and so
I'm surprised he hasn't come back in and
I know adjusted it. I didn't adjust this mic. What's beautiful too about that is that there's oftentimes when you try to control something, it doesn't usually. I mean, people do try to control things because it can feel good that you're in control, but it also can be so stressful because often it doesn't go the way you want, and so there's this like it's. You're protecting your peace. You're protecting your peace in a lot of ways too, by you're just not forcing it. Trying to, again, and that's one of my language I use. I'm like, I like to have an open hand. Like you try to have an open hand with things, listening to the whispers. And I think I could go on a tangent about string theory and multi-universes and the idea of science.
Come back and we can talk about all of that.
The idea of science and spirituality and the question of are we using different language for things that are really similar as far as our accessibility.
Let's just record a whole bunch of different episodes today that we'll just play back to back to back.
Oh, the ramblings! I love
it. Well, that's the stuff that I actually love getting into, and it's so controversial. I mean, I have learned, especially in where I live, that you kind of have to feel people out before you start talking about the woo-woo. And,
for sure.
Start talking about the idea of spirituality and.
Some people shut down. I mean, and understandable because maybe there's a lot of people who have spiritual and religious trauma who have been taken advantage of by people, and so it's understandable that and it's not always, but sometimes when spirituality starts being talked about, people just shut it off. They're like, oh my gosh, and they put you into a certain category because they're like, oh, you are this type of person, and you're like, oh honey, and not oh honey because that sounds so condescending, but it's like, I get it. Like I get it. I have seen that people within certain realms who believe in spirituality and different things, and it's really, to say the least, unfortunate because there's a lot of unhealth that's happening. Anyways, I could go on a tangent about even spirituality and all of that, but okay, I'm going to come back around because oh my gosh, I'm looking at the timestamp. We're an hour in and I haven't even talked about when my daughter was born yet. Good luck, folks.
Well, I mean, Andreas actually, he laid out really great information.
Sure he did. His brain is phenomenal.
But I think you've been able to, what's been interesting about this, even though we haven't specifically talked about Rio, you have been able to connect emotions and, ways of thinking and feeling and expressing yourself and the grief. I mean, there's still, even though we haven't said, okay, you went to the hospital, this is what happened to Rio, which people are going to be able to hear from, Andreas's episode, you've been able to bring this down to a level that so many people are going to be able to resonate with, because how many other people out there, have been in a situation similar to yours, of course, not exactly like yours, but those plans, right? We all have life plans, and it is awful whenever it doesn't go the way the dreams that you had hoped for. And whether it be through loss or it be through, divorce or it be through, a job there's so many different angles of grieving. And I do believe that those, if we let it happen, are humbling to us, can actually bring us back down to a foundational level where we can grow and be stronger and be, even though I hate the word strong, but more resilient and learn the lessons and, create life for how we want it for ourselves and understand that you can't have the good all the time. The bad is going to come in. It's how you choose to see it, how you choose to walk with it, that is going to make all the difference in the world on if you truly become a victim or if you're a victim and a survivor.
Yeah, and
right?
I think that you it's not even right, like that the grief itself. Instead of thinking of like working through something, so like, oh, I'm no longer grieving, or the grief itself shrinks, which is a way you can think about it. But also I think that in growth, your capacity grows. Your capacity grows to hold the things that are heavy and hard. Like as you practice feeling your emotions, your ability to feel those emotions and not be overtaken by them can grow. Yeah, I don't know, your capacity.
1000%. And that comes back to your, your hands you're holding, because you're able to hold, there's a book, What Happened to You? It's an Oprah book. But that is essentially the question for all of us.
Yeah.
What happened to you? But it's not just stopping there and asking that question. It's encouraging people to be able to hold that in their hands and live with it in a way that it's always going to be there.
Yeah.
And how can you live with it and stay regulated and still find joy and happiness and purpose in life?
Yeah.
It's not something that you're supposed to just carry and let it break you down and ruin your relationships and, ruin what could be for your life. You can do that. That's the easy way out. It's so much easier to not face all of that. And I know that for me, I don't want to live like that anymore. That is not an option for me. I could be pissed off and angry about all these different circumstances for the rest of my life. It didn't go the way I wanted it to. How dare, God or the universe or whatever, you want to attribute that to, or even point the finger at other people. My dad created these unhealthy behavior patterns in myself, these unhealthy attachments, this codependency. It's his fault. And I could leave it there.
Yeah.
Or I could say, but wait a minute. And like Andres would say, that wasn't my fault. And it is my responsibility to change that for myself, And so I think, it's a very powerful thing to be able to have this conversation as well, especially as a mother who is sitting across from me, who has her grief moments about it didn't go the way I thought. You're supposed to grieve that, and you're supposed to hold it, and you're supposed to walk forward with it and not let it destroy you in the process.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, to be able to move on, either have your capacity grow or the emotion lessen as it feels hard to lean into something, turning towards it and leaning into it and feeling it and validating it. Really, like if other people aren't validating it, validate it for yourself. Like that's the most important part of like what you are, like your experience is valid. My grief over not having my baby flip is valid, even though it feels silly post, because little did I know in a couple of weeks there would be a much heavier grief, and that was going to seem not as big of a deal. Clearly, when I started talking to you about it, I still was welling up with tears because I'm like, oh, there's still like some sadness in there about that. And I just note it, it's interesting to note things, but as hard as it can feel, if you lean into something and give yourself permission, there's so much power in it, and it gives you power back over your body instead of the emotion having the power. It's like, hey, no, I'm choosing to lean in, to acknowledge it, to explore it, to get curious and not judgmental, to not be mad at myself or like, oh, I can't believe I can't believe I'm feeling sad about this. How dumb. No, I mean, it's like, oh, I feel sadness. How interesting. How interesting that I'm experiencing this grief. I'm often you're not alone, like all of us and all of our experiences, all of our griefs and our joys are somehow simultaneously unique and different from one another. I can't tell you how you're going through something, but at the same time, there's a lot of shared experiences, and so we're also not alone. So as infinitely as we are unique and different from one another, we are so the same often in our human experience. So
that is all so beautifully said. So beautifully said, and something that's very important to, in this specific conversation with, this is, if only you knew how much I needed this conversation today too. I mean, it has been exactly a good reminder for me in a situation that I'm currently going through. And that's the power and that's the beauty in having these conversations is, picking up nuggets from people along the way. And I think, providing nuggets and people being able to absorb those nuggets, it stays with them. Right. Yeah. And it's, it's always a 2 degree shift, 1 degree shift, 2 degree shift. It's not like you hear it and you're going to change overnight, but it's the repetition of hearing it. And like you were saying, not feeling alone and, knowing that you're not alone, because it can feel very lonely.
Oh my gosh. Absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Well, so we didn't really get to your birth story.
I've got more. I don't know. Like, does this, do we split it? Do we do another episode? Because if you have time, I've got more to say, but
definitely, we could talk for a little bit longer. We're at the hour.
Okay.
So we could talk a little bit more about that, but I'd love to get the Rio story.
Yeah. So I'll try and we're basically there now. I'll just kind of do a synopsis. So as far as the secondary appointment for the ECV of trying to get my baby to flip, we went in, we got all the stuff about what the C-section could look like if it happens, an emergency C-section. I had to sign off and approve that. And then, they started doing multiple ultrasounds on me, whatever. And then what the story that Andres had told is a woman came in and was like, because I was going to go and get it done with all of the anesthetic,
Mm-hmm.
And the woman was like, hey, hi, just want to let you know I am the head of this department. I do the ECV procedures, or the most ECV procedures. I see the most complicated cases, and I have the highest success rates. And I'm just telling you this, not to toot my own horn, so to speak, but just to let you know that I have authority when I say I will not be doing this ECV procedure on you. And that was a gut punch for me. I felt defeated. I was confused, all the things. And there's reasons why. So she said, hey, when you do this ECV, you did it before without anesthesia. If we did it with anesthesia, you're going to be more numb, from the rib cage down. So you're not going to be able to give us feedback. So we'll be able to push harder. We'll be able to be more aggressive than the other person was. And you won't be able to give us feedback if it's too much. And she's like, that gives us a risk, because I had, Andres knows the numbers, but I had my placenta had what they called a small accessory, which I didn't even know it was possible. I like to joke that it had a tiny little handbag.
That's what I was going to say. It's carrying around a little purse, right?
It's bedazzled. Hey, but it's basically a smaller secondary placenta, which also, even talking about it, I'm like, oh, it feels like something I've seen from cartoons, when cartoons crawl through radioactive material and they've got 3 eyes, I'm like, oh, I've got a secondary placenta. What's wrong? So I've got a regular placenta, this thing, and then a secondary placenta. And she said that it was more exposure. And if they were to push too hard, it was not protected, and it could have ruptured. It could have caused me to bleed out. I could have lost the baby. It could have lost me, if they would have gone too hard with this procedure. So and they found it through ultrasounds, and I'm like, wow, this is crazy. I've had so many ultrasounds, and no one's caught it. But I think part of it, looking back, and this is just if my story, I've noticed sometimes when I tell my story, it causes anxiety in other people that I'm not currently feeling, but if they're pregnant or, they're like, I don't want that to happen to me. And I'm like, no, I get that. But something we didn't know is we just picked an ultrasound place and we found out, like looking back, hindsight's 2020, where you're like, oh, they made comments that they rarely see babies. They do ultrasounds for other stuff, but it's like they see baby once in a blue moon. And so we didn't go to a specialty clinic that did ultrasounds on babies all the time, so they knew what to look for. I was like, oh, where does my insurance take? What's closest to me? Cool, let's do it. So like if we happen to get pregnant again, I'll be making different choices on who does our ultrasounds. Anyways, so it was pretty upsetting. I was upset then, a lot of grief involved. I'm now in the cerebral part of my brain, so I'm no longer in the tear portion. You'll notice if I'll go back and forth, if I can connect with emotion, I stay there. But if I get too cerebral too quick, the emotion kind of gets compartmentalized. But it was really hard. It was really hard for me. And I was feeling a lot of grief and loss around that. We were talking about a C-section. I wanted so badly to have a vaginal birth that I made a plan with my midwives. We found one traveling doctor that would do Frank's breech birth, vaginal deliveries. She works for multiple hospitals and she's on call. So the plan was, instead of me scheduling a C-section, I was going to go into labor. I was going to experience the labor process because that's something that I just wanted that. I wanted to experience it. I wanted Rio, we didn't know her name at the time, but I wanted Rio to choose the time at which, or Rio and my body to choose the time at which she came. And then when I would go into labor, I'd call my midwives. They'd call around to the hospitals, see if that one doctor was working. And if she was, then I'd go attempt a vaginal delivery. And if she wasn't, then I would make a decision and go get a C-section, because OHSU no longer does C-sections unless it's this one doctor, and she works at Legacy anyway, so just hospitals in my area. So that all happened. I did the labor thing. I was full labor, full experience, which is another story for another time. Ended up at the hospital. The lady was not working, so I knew how to get a C-section. And so again, I was pushing it off, hoping I could have, I didn't even pack a bag. You're supposed to pack a bag beforehand. So when I was going into labor, I was like, oh shoot. And when I was awake in labor the night before I delivered, I was searching stuff on the internet and I was like, okay, what should I pack? What do I need to bring? Which is, like me, for those who know me. But, so we ended up in the hospital. Everything went really, really quick. It went faster than they thought as far as my delivery. So it kind of was like a quasi emergency C-section, because she came quicker than they were anticipating. And then when they got me on the table, they told me that, they could see her head, or they told Andres later, they could see her head coming out of my cervix. So it was we were pushing it. And I don't know, this is where we're already over at time. I mean, there's so much involved as far as processing just giving birth in general that thankfully there was a midwife at the hospital. She's like, it's going to feel really intense. It's going to feel like a pit crew. Fun fact, if Anders didn't tell you, you could search this, but hospitals actually used Formula One, the sport, a racing drive sport. They have pit stops that are extremely efficient and fast, and they actually learned how to improve their emergency did I lose you?
Don't worry about. Yeah, I'm thinking technology. I'm gonna have to get a new computer.
Oh no!
To be able to handle the bandwidth of all this. I even tried moving my Wi-Fi extension router. See, either that or someone. Even though I'm on Do Not Disturb, someone's trying to call me.
That makes sense.
My next, if that is not the case, my next step is to probably upgrade the computer.
Yeah. I got you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh gosh. Anyways, I know I'm just trying to do this quickly. This is where I'm I can go on so many different tangents, but there's the amount of, you could call it trauma. There's so much as far as
giving birth. So the pit crew thing, the hospitals have learned how to move more efficiently. But the lady told me when I went in for the C-section, she's like, it's going to be bright lights. There's going to be a bunch of people. They're going to ask you, they're going to be talking to you. It's going to seem crazy, but they know what they're doing. So she gave me a heads up. It's going to be overwhelming, which I was grateful for. But not only that, like for like legal reasons, they're like, name, date of birth. Like they asked me again before they do a thing to me. Name, date of birth. By the third person, I was like, are you kidding me? Like, you know who I am. I have not changed. My birthday and my name have not changed within the 60 seconds of me being in here. And then they go to give the epidural. And with the epidural, you know, I'm thinking through potential of losing my ability to walk, potentially losing my feelings. I know women who have gone through for various different reasons and they no longer have feeling in certain areas of their body. You can lose tactile feeling, maybe in your abdominal area. You can lose feeling in your like nether regions, more or less. Like things can happen. And so you're going through all of this while they're going to give me the spinal, which is a one-time epidural. But they have to ask you, is it centered? So legally, because if it's not centered, apparently poor things can happen. So as you're in this chaos, as I'm in active labor, they're like, do we have approval to give you this epidural while you're in active labor? And as I'm screaming, I'm like, yeah, I guess so, sure. Like, what am I supposed to say? No. And so then I have to give them yes. And then they're like, is this centered? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if it's centered. Just like, yes. I'm like, what?
Especially if they pre-numbed you before.
The implication. Well, it's just of knowing, but it's like they're tapping your back, but this is a thing to like numb you from like the breastbone down. But you're like, oh my gosh, like I don't know. And then when they finally do get the epidural in you, they're taking these little like in my brain. They're the little tiny plastic tables that you get in the center of pizzas to hold the pizza box up. That's not it, but I'm imagining those. Actually, yes. Oh, it is that. So they take those and they poke you with it and they say, they're like, oh, can you feel this? Can you feel that? Can you feel that? As you're in active labor. Well, for me, I was in active labor. And I'm like, I don't know. I think I'm numb. Can I feel it? Like, and then this is the process where as far as like a C-section is fucking wild. It felt like I was a piece of dough on a table and you've got 6 people around you. They draw up a sheet and I just felt like they were aggressively like moving my body like I was a piece of dough. They were kneading the dough back and forth. I wasn't feeling pain, but I could feel pressure. I could feel movement. I could feel like you're on the table and you're being pushed around. I'm like, are they cutting me open? Are my guts out? Like, what's going on? Are they to the baby? Like, this is crazy. Like, and then I'm trying, again, managing my thought process, trying to like, okay, don't take it too seriously. Don't work yourself up. I don't want to work myself up into like anxiety over it, though I guess maybe I still am experiencing anxiety, but not to a tipping point where it feels so uncomfortable. But so all of that, they cut you open and then they kind of quickly show you the baby and I'm drugged out, which I've heard moms talk about. So the birthing experience, often moms believe like, oh, I should be feeling these immense feelings of love and joy and whatever. But depending on your experience, you're probably thinking about your body. You could be numbed a little bit. And so you kind of feel a little bit disassociated, not to mention postpartum depression and like hormones. There's a whole different I didn't experience that from my knowledge, thankfully, but it just is, there's a lot that can go on. So if you don't necessarily feel that like, oh my gosh, it's my baby right away, that makes sense. Cause you're like, oh, actually I feel a little bit disassociated. Like for I've talked to moms who feel that way, like just cause of the numbing. You're like, I don't like, yes, I love my baby. I know that I do. But like, I'm like, my literal first words were, oh, like, I don't know, like, it's a baby, it's you. Yeah.
I mean, those are just our brain's way of keeping us safe too.
Oh yeah.
You know?
For sure. So I wasn't really sure what was going on. I was more focused on my body being jostled like a big pile of pizza dough. And even when they were like sewing me up, I'm like, wow, I hope they do this accurately. Cool. You know, like I had my midwife there. They had taken Andres. They had taken the baby away. I didn't really know what was going on. They rolled me to a separate room. And then Andres, again, he gave the timeline. You can listen to his episode of more detail of like just the intensity of it. But we didn't know anything was wrong, but then something was clearly wrong. And then Andres was running back and forth to me. And he's like, she may need surgery. We don't know. We're trying to get clear answers, which is there's a whole journey of trying to get clear answers in the NICU. And it could be an entirely different episode. But it's just it's really hard. It was really hard. And there was a lot. I was still processing, am I going to get the feelings back in my legs? Like, am I going to be able to walk again? Just because I was told it's a possibility that's not, you know? So you're like, this is like, how do I hold this openly with the what ifs without going too far deep into it? But I'm like, people schedule these women. And I'm like, I've heard women say like, oh yeah, I had one C-section. And like, girl, that's the way to do it. I'm going to schedule another C-section. I'm not even going to go into labor, you know? And I'm like, how do you talk so casually about being a pile of pizza dough and having 10 layers of skin cut open?
Listen, I've done it 3 times.
And
I'm one of those people who did not get feeling. I mean, Mila is now 6.5, and that the scar line I mean, it'll be numb for the rest of my life.
It's wild. And what they also don't talk about, and I found out later, is that you can get what's called a C-section shelf because of those 10 layers when they sew it up. Some of that can not be sewed quite correctly because they're kind of doing it. I mean, they do slower when they do the sewing process, but it can kind of like areas can be tighter than others, which can cause the skin to kind of like, I don't know, where's the camera? Can kind of cause like a little like shelf. Like this is like the skin where the sewing, the sew line, and it can kind of go over. But then with that C-section shelf, there are things that you can do, which I like was talking to like a dentist about it, and she's like, oh, I didn't know. And I was like, yeah, you can get like suction cups, you can do massage. There's things you can do
myofascial release
to do the myofascial release to try and get rid of the C-section scar. That's a whole different thing. Anyways, the things that I didn't know about. But so you're, wondering if your baby's okay. I don't know. I had a sister who showed up. That was huge for me. A sister showed up and I just instantly was weeping. She lives like 3 hours away and I was like, you're here. And I'm like, thank you so much for being here. Thank you to all my sisters for the support. I love you all. Very grateful for you and all family and friends too throughout the whole process. I'm going to start crying again. But it's like, there's something so special about having people who care about you around you in the unknown. So yeah, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of, it's just scary. It's scary, the unknowns of your own body, the scary unknowns of like what's going to happen, with the baby and if the baby's going to be okay.
Yeah. And that is actually where I want to stop you because I do want to do an episode solely on picking up in the, okay, I'm out. So we know now that, you're kind of dissociated. You're, that something's going on with Rio, but you're not quite caught up yet. And Andreas is going back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
So let's stop here and let's do another episode.
Okay. I will
for
say
people with the actual what happened in the hospital.
Yeah.
And I do have some questions still that I'd like to be able to
go
ask.
with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that sounds great. And I think, something too that I'll want to process or want to talk about in that next episode, I think is, I just had it and I just lost it. It's the grief, because I know you actually touched on it. This will be a good full circle. You touched on it in the very beginning of the episode. You mentioned, grief and guilt and the responsibility that we assume. And so all of the questions of that revolving around my birth story, how it happened, what happened to my daughter, my responsibility on even down to getting a C-section and being like being like, can I say that I gave birth? I got cut open.
Right?
Can I know I can't. I know that I can, but it's like the questions that come into place in that process.
And I do also want, so Andreas took us through basically what happened in the NICU and all of that. But what I haven't heard and listeners haven't heard as well, it didn't just end when you guys left the hospital, and that is a topic that is very important because you don't, Rio leaves the hospital, right? And she's healing, but the what ifs and the appointments and the, not knowing and all of the things that you have dealt with along the process are just as traumatic as the experience in the hospital itself. So I would like to know more about that as well. Awesome. Well, I expect my coffee next time. I think you guys better figure out a way to get me the coffee.
Got it.
Get me the coffee. So it's been this conversation, did not go as we had intended, but this
classic.
has been, it's well, but that's what, I mean, these are open conversations, right? These are spaces to talk about things and it may not go where we expected to, but it still opens up conversation that others are going to hear and find value in. So I appreciate all of the golden nuggets that you have dropped along the way this episode. And I look forward to to diving into, what happened after, what happened in your eyes and
Yeah.
your experience in your body after Ria was whisked to the NICU.
Thank you.
So let's
do that.
Say goodbye for today.
Yeah,
and we'll pick right back up.
That sounds good. And we can end it there. I just also wanted to thank you because I think I didn't realize, I was like, oh, Andres and I have a plan to record her story so she can listen to it at some point. We haven't done that yet. And I haven't told this story in a while or gone into details. And I'm like, oh, it's been a while since I've gone into this. And I'm like, oh, it feels really nice to be able to talk about this stuff. So thank you.
Oh, good. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate it. I welcome anybody who wants to, share, because like you just said, talking about it is the steps toward healing. You cannot keep it in, and you're not just talking about it for your own healing. You're talking about it and encouraging others to heal and helping others heal. So I appreciate your time this morning or this afternoon or whenever it is. I guess it's still morning. It was still morning for you. I know. You guys need to catch up to my time zone.
That's right.
So.
That's right.
All right. So everyone, thanks for listening to another episode. We will have Bri back on to continue that story. She's definitely worth the listen. So until next time, we'll see you. Bye.
Bye.